Good day, students. This is your teacher, Renette, and welcome to our oral communication class. We learned that communication is a process, and since it is a process, we need to know the elements of communication. The communication process includes the steps we take in order to ensure we have succeeded in communicating. The communication process comprises essential and interconnected elements. The first is the sender, or the source, or the speaker. It is simply the source of information or message. The source, whether a single person or a group, develops an idea and communicates it through a message to others. The sender's role is to encode this message effectively using both words and nonverbal cues like body language and tone of voice. The clarity of communication, intention, and choice of communication method all affect how well the message is understood by the receiver. For example, in a classroom situation, when a teacher discusses their lesson, the sender is the teacher, but students can also become senders or sources of information when they share ideas to the class, which makes it interactive. Second is message. This is the information, ideas, or thoughts conveyed by the speaker in words or in actions. The message involves those verbal and non-verbal behaviors enacted by communicators that are interpreted with meaning by others. Messages can be intentional or unintentional. An intentional message is when we have a clear image in our mind that we want to communicate to someone and we do so accurately. An unintentional message occurs when what we intend to convey is not what the other person understands. For example, in the class, your teacher Renette is busy preparing for her lesson, and suddenly one student asked about the assignment, and because she was distracted, her response was in a neutral tone, which the student misinterpreted it as a bad response. This situation illustrates that as communicators, teachers can't always be sure that the message they wish to communicate is interpreted as they intended. Next is encoding, the process of converting the message into words, actions, or other forms that the speaker or sender understands. For example, in oral communication class, Ms. Renette wants to explain the elements of effective communication to her students. She pictures in her mind the key components. She carefully selects the clearest words and visual aids to describe each element, illustrating how they work together in a communication process. By doing this, she ensures her students can understand and apply these elements to enhance their own communication skills. Next is channel, the medium or the means such as personal or non-personal, verbal or non-verbal, in which the encoded message is conveyed. The channel is very simply the means through which the message travels. In face-to-face communication, the channel involves all of our senses. So the channel is what we see, hear, touch, smell, and perhaps what we taste. When we are communicating with someone online, the channel is the computer. When texting, the channel is the cell phone. And when watching a movie on cable, the channel is the TV. The channel can have a profound impact on the way a message is interpreted. Listening to a recording of a speaker does not have the same psychological impact as listening to the same speech in person or watching that person on television. The next element is decoding. It is the process of interpreting the encoded message of the speaker by the receiver. It is the reverse process of listening to words, thinking about them, and turning those words into mental images. Let's go back to the example of the encoding. After listening to Ms. Renette's explanation about the elements of effective communication, Students decode the lesson by first comprehending the key components. They mentally visualize how these elements interact in real-life communication scenarios. Understanding Ms. Renette's careful selection of clear words and visual aids to illustrate their interplay. The next element is receiver. It is the recipient of the message. This person is charged with decoding the message in an attempt to understand the intentions of the source. Next element is feedback. The reactions, responses, or information provided by the speaker. What are examples of feedback inside the classroom? Students provide feedback through actions such as nodding, smiling, sleeping, giving compliments, and offering criticisms, both positive and negative, whether conveyed verbally or non-verbally. The next element is context. In the 1980s, context was about where communication happened, like in places such as churches, homes, offices, loud restaurants, or stores. People adjusted how they talked based on unwritten rules for each place. Now, context includes not only locations but also how we relate to others and the rules for communication in those relationships. This shows how both environment and relationships affect how we communicate. So you do not speak the same way to your best friend as you do to a small child, your parent, your boss, your doctor, or a police officer. In other words, the context refers to the norms that govern communication in different situations and relationships. And the last one is barrier. This is the factor that affects the flow of communication. In the communication process, there are many barriers to consider. One such barrier is noise, which pertains to the physical environment. Some reasons why students may not be attentive in class include barriers such as the teacher's voice not being loud enough, pronunciation issues, or students feeling sleepy, and many more. These barriers hinder effective communication, interrupting the flow of information. Alright, there you have, students, the 9 elements of communication. Let us recap. They are speaker, message, encoding, channel, decoding, receiver, feedback, context, and barrier. Now, I will give you one example of the communication process using these elements of communication. How does the sample sound so far? I hope you also share a communication situation to apply this process. Happy learning!